Addiction, more than a substance. Much of the research for this speech has come from Dr. Broderick's Drugs and Human Behavior class, the material I've been exposed to in class, Dr. Amen's book on Chain Your Brain, as well as some personal struggles with addiction. How do people get hooked on a substance, whether legal or illegal? If people are compared with the vervet monkeys on the island of St. Kitts, it is arguable that people are genetically predisposed to addiction. If heavy drinking runs in one's family history, it's likely that person's going to have develop an addiction to alcohol or a drinking problem. Consider the monkeys. Their history, their genetic background, and their current actions explains their predisposition. Aside from that, though, there's various other factors. Perhaps the most important is brain function. The way we treat our brains determines how our brains will treat us. Everything we consume, whether it be food, beverage, alcohol, legal or illegal drugs, cigarettes, etc., our daily activities, that all affects our brain, and in turn that affects how we act. The prefrontal cortex in our brain is our commander-in-chief. When we're young, we do not have a strong prefrontal cortex. Our brains will learn from experience. We learn from mistakes. If our brains are treated with care at a young age. Parents, please pay attention to what I'm saying. What parents do, their behavior, their own personal behavior, how they treat or do not treat their children, what they do feed or do not feed their children, what they do and do not discuss with their children, that all affects the prefrontal cortex. According to Dr. Amen, adolescents typically have less efficient activity in the PFC because this part of the brain isn't fully developed until the age of 25. Until then, the brain is undergoing a process called myelinization, in which a protective substance called myelin wraps around the brain's neurons, helping the brain's nerve cells work up to 10 to 100 times more efficiently. So when drugs are used at a young age, it affects the development of the prefrontal cortex. And this is tough because a lot of kids use drugs because they come from broken homes, because they are neglected. So don't neglect your children. Talk to them. Pay attention to them. Realize that they do exist. I didn't come from a broken home, but a good portion of my friends did. And I guess to fit in, I experimented with drugs and alcohol. Maybe because I loved sweets when I was younger. I love coffee. My grandfather loves coffee. My mother loves coffee. I love drinking coffee. I started at 13, and then I started drinking it heavily in college at the age of 19. I also experimented with tobacco, marijuana, alcohol, and hallucinogens, mostly between the ages of 17 and 24. While I sparingly used hallucinogens, I started drinking very heavily. When I turned 21, it soon became an addiction because it was easily accessible. I'd wake up thinking about giving up drinking. I'd wake up thinking about drinking. I'd exhaust most of my funds. Majority of my paycheck would go to the bar. I was frequently late with rent money because of that. I also had a few near-death experiences between 2004 and 2010, one of which was a final wake-up call, and luckily not a coffin. Despite all this, I still continue to use. In hindsight, if I ate healthier and exercised more as a child and a preteen, my addictions probably would have never kicked in full gear. I often raided the refrigerator and the pantry for the sweetest possible snacks after school. I guess I was looking for that rush. I was young, my metabolism helped me maintain the weight with the stuff that I ate. But my emotional brain ran my life. It got to the point where I wouldn't even be able to fight a craving. During when I was a younger adult, letting my limbic system and basal ganglia completely take over. I had no supervisor. Now I do, because I exercise and I eat healthier. But my prefrontal cortex, it could be stronger. It is where it is. It's a work in progress, and it's one step at a time. While I drank heavily, I religiously followed Dr. Amen's 4 C's: craving, compulsion, loss of control, and continued use in spite of consequences. So, why do addicts relapse? I tried to quit drinking a couple times, and I relapsed. It's never too late to get sober. It's tough for an addict to resist the relapse. It is very tough. I've been 3 years clean now. But it's been tough, and that first year was definitely very tough. Heroin addicts, they suffer a really rough withdrawal, making them feel very sick. So they continue to use in spite of the consequences, even when they've exhausted everything. They could be sleeping with people for money. They could be prostitutes. They could be doing the lowest of the low to get money to support their habit just so they don't feel withdrawal. Meth addicts experience extreme depression once they've beaten their withdrawal because the meth gave them such a dopamine rush that it became so salient to the brain in terms of pleasure. One recovered meth addict that we studied in Dr. Broswick's class mentioned that it takes the brain 6 months to a year to generate dopamine on its own. She thought she could kick the habit on her own, and she relapsed just because of that depression. She put herself in a situation where she got better. So how do we do that? Drugs play with dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and endorphins, things you do not want to mess with inside your brain, things you want to treat right in your brain. So when treated right, you could feel natural highs. Eat healthy. Avoid fast food. Limit foods high in fat and sugar. Eat fruits and veggies. Drink green tea, but limit caffeine and exercise. This will keep dopamine levels healthy. Exercise definitely boosts dopamine. Also, exercise allows one tryptophan to get to the brain faster than other proteins, and that allows healthy serotonin levels. Consume foods that are high in glutamic acid. Foods and drink that are high in glutamic acid, such as raw spinach, oats, green tea, lentils. Take magnesium and vitamin B supplements. That'll allow healthy GABA function. Eat a small amount of chocolate every single day to bring your brain just a little bit of pleasure. According to Dr. Amen, cocoa has been shown to increase endorphin production in the brain. Engage in brain-healthy activities such as exercise, learning a musical instrument, or even education. Going to school for something one is passionate about increases healthy brain activity, especially when that person applies everything that is learned. It's okay to get hooked on brain-healthy activities. In doing so, it'll distract the person from relapsing. Cravings are easily stifled when one's PFC can calm the limbic system without a struggle. This is why heroin addicts have such a difficult time getting off. The methadone program keeps heroin addicts addicted. It offers them one solution. We're going to keep you stable. But it doesn't consider the person's psychological addiction. If an addict makes it through withdrawal cold turkey, he has to deal with the cravings and the depression. But you put that person in an inpatient rehabilitation center and force him to stimulate healthy brain function via proper diet and exercise, things might be different. Rehab needs to be a process where a person learns his or her brain and learns how to take control of it, not where they trade one drug for the next. So parents, please be proactive with yourselves. Figure out what you're addicted to. But consider your behaviors and how they affect your children. Make sure to have that conversation about how drugs and alcohol, including inhalants, and have that conversation before they reach that experimental age that most adolescents reach, that you probably went through as a teenager yourself. Have that conversation about how those substances affect your brain. Rather than drugs or alcohol, a teenager may get hooked on playing sports, academics, making music, dating, all which are activities that promote healthy brain function, just as long as no serious head injuries are sustained. Give them the tools to have a healthy brain, so by the time the myelin is fully developed, they have a very strong prefrontal cortex.